Okay. Hi, everybody. This feels so weird. Welcome back to GIVR. It's been a long time. It's been a minute. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to kind of reintroduce myself to you guys and to maybe introduce myself for the first time to some new listeners, hopefully. I just want to start off by saying that I appreciate so much all of the messages that I've gotten from you guys saying that you missed the podcast. When's the podcast coming back? Some of you have voiced some frustrations that it was gone and that it was inconsistent at best at the end of last year. And I just want to say, I first of all appreciate the messages, and I also totally understand and get it. I'm an avid podcast listener, and I know how committed I get to tuning in and having the weekly listen or the daily listen for some of the podcasts that I listen to. So I can completely understand your frustration. And it was definitely a much needed thing that I needed to do. I had to take a break. I was going through a lot personally, and it was just not the right time for me to be bearing my soul. Yeah, I feel like sometimes when you're in like a very vulnerable state, especially when that state it results in a little bit of insecurity, I didn't really trust myself to share appropriately, to not overshare, to not undershare, to speak powerfully in terms of my truth and my experience. And I really just wanted to take some time, honestly, off of all social media to really ground myself because I did go through a pretty transformative holiday season. I've shared a little bit in other episodes because I did pop in a few times. I think I did, at least at the beginning of the year. But, anyways, I'm here now and I'm so happy to be back. And to be honest, I kind of feel like a new person. I feel like I've had a lot of realizations and kind of internal work that I've done with myself that has led to me seeing things differently and interacting differently with certain people and with myself. Last year, you guys know, or maybe you don't, but I decided to 100% step away from bodybuilding and retire. And then I went on this journey to lose muscle. I was all in, I was so committed, and I don't know, I just dove right in and I was like, okay, cardio, dieting, I know how to do this, I know what it takes. And I kind of jumped into this extreme lifestyle. And the irony is that the choice to step away from bodybuilding was to do something a bit less extreme. And I ended up kind of doing the same thing. And I've shared a little bit about this already last year because at the end of the year, I kind of had a wake up call. I lost my cycle and there was a lot going on that was, I mean, forcing me to look in the mirror and realize that I really wasn't taking care of myself in a healthy way, despite of how I looked, despite of how my body looked. And I liked the way my body looked, but it wasn't healthy. I can say now that I was suffering definitely from an eating disorder. And I don't want to really go into the details because it's not important. But what is important is that when I find I'm losing control on certain things in my life, this is a very common human experience. I will reach for what I can control. And for me, that has always been my body. And when kind of deciding that it was time for us to start a family and going to the fertility clinic and realizing that maybe having a baby wasn't going to be as easy as an experience as it is for a lot of people, I really started to feel a lot of shame that I had gotten myself into an unhealthy place where I had lost my cycle and I wasn't really dealing with things emotionally and mentally. And I was just numbing with over exercising and under eating and controlling kind of the outward appearance of everything. Yeah, that kind of was the tail end of the year. And then we had Christmas explosion. And again, out of respect for my family and people in my life, I'm not going to go into details, but there was a little bit of I'm sure most people know that emotions live in our body if we don't process them. And I think I've been living with a lot of feelings for a long time, and I haven't actually been processing them or feeling them or even really recognizing that they were there. So Christmas came and everything kind of came to the surface. I started to do a lot of, I mean, I always have done work on myself, but I started to see a new therapist, Jordan, last year. And I really started to actually get in the weeds of who I am as a woman and how I show up as a wife and as a friend and as a daughter, as a sister, and why I do the things that I do. As you become more aware and you start to feel more, I felt like things from my past were really coming up a lot for me. And I'm talking about like childhood stuff. I'm talking about things from when I was really, really young that I never really, I mean, even knew or understood that were there. So obviously, when you're around your family who you grew up with, things like these childhood wounds are going to feel way closer to the surface. So everything kind of came to a head for me personally at Christmas. And I started to realize that there was a really broken little girl inside of me that I hadn't been realizing that she was there and she needed love. I was just trying to kind of fix adult Melissa and show up powerfully as an adult. And I never really understood what people meant when they said that you need to heal your inner child. And I think that's because I don't really like the term heal your inner child. I didn't understand what that meant. I was like, heal what? Like, nothing's broken. Like, healing always kind of means fixing to me. And I just didn't really understand. It's funny. I was driving and my brother sent me a YouTube link. And I think it was titled like every broke person needs to hear this or something. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I know I'm bad with money. Like, what's he sending me now? And I'm assuming that it's about my spending habits because I've never been good with money. He told me a timestamp, but I just listened to the whole thing because I was driving. And this man was talking about his relationship with his he was talking about his relationship with his mom specifically, and how every time he went home, he was triggered and he was angry and all of these things. And he said I don't even really remember the details, but he ended up doing some sort of exercise that allowed him to have extreme empathy for his mom. And through the empathy, he was able to let go of the anger. And he kind of spoke about how the anger that he was holding on to was actually giving away his power. Because instead of him being able to listen and feel and not react and kind of be who he wanted to be as a man, he was angry and thus giving all his power to control his reactions and to not even control, but to react in a way that was authentic to him. He was giving that away. And I just really sat with it for a second and I was like, who am I serving by holding on to all these feelings of, I mean, anger and sadness and resentment for experiences that I have had throughout my life? I just remember hearing the sentence, giving up your power, and being moved by it. And I was like, huh, what have I been doing? Like, what am I accomplishing by like constantly stewing in these feelings of the past? I can't go back and change that. I can't do anything about that. And if I'm to actually be honest with myself, nothing was done to me out of malicious intent. Nothing was done with the hopes that I would grow up one day and be angry and be this insecure woman that doesn't know how to kind of feel her feelings. So I already feel like I'm rambling, but that moment really kind of shifted my perspective. And I had a therapy session probably a few weeks after listening to that. And I really was able to be very vulnerable because I just had let go of a lot of anger and mechanisms that I think I was using to protect myself against anyone to come too close so that they could hurt me. In that session, I just remember really feeling a lot of love for my younger self. And when I say that, I mean, I could actually see this like little happy girl who wanted to be seen and who wanted to be celebrated. And she was smart and funny and tenacious. And I felt so much love for little Melissa. And it was so overwhelming in my body. I cried. And all of a sudden, that healing inner child thing that I never got clicked. And I realized that I was really blocked by the word healing. And I don't think I need to heal my inner child. I think I need to love her in the way that she needs. And I have the power to do that. I'm really, at this point in my life, the only one who has the power to do that because I'm the only one who still knows her and still has her. She's not in the universe as an energy anymore. She's in my body as an energy. So I'm the one that has to love her and see her and accept her. And it was a huge light bulb for me. And I was just able to shed so much anger and feelings of wishing that things were different and all these things that I've experienced in oh my god, my whole life. There was a sense of freedom because I think that power that I had been relinquishing to others, to anyone else, I took it back. And I was walking the other day and I used to always say, if only we could love ourselves in the way that other people love us, we would be so much healthier. And I've realized that we can. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And that's why I feel ready to be back here because there's just some form of acceptance and forgiveness for myself for everything. And I feel a lot more open to others and to kind of seeing the good in people. I think I've always been a pretty judgmental, guarded person, presuming bad intentions or presuming rejection or presuming, just the things that go on in our minds that we can convince ourselves of. And I feel very free from all of that. So, yeah, that's a little, that's a small kind of scratching the surface of what I've been going through. And it's not dramatic and it's not a big deal, but life right now is kind of strange for me. I feel like I'm 33 years old. I'm wanting to start a family and it's not happening right now for us. So kind of learning to still move forward and to still trust in divine timing and trust that what will be for us will come to us, but at the same time working for what we want and balancing that is it's very interesting for someone that has a little bit of control issues, to say them lightly. So yeah, all that being said, I'm really happy to be back. I have a baby niece. I'm sure you guys saw. I have not met her yet. I'm still in Canada and I cannot wait for the day that I get to meet her. And I hope that it's soon. But Courtney is doing well. I can't even imagine how overwhelming it is having your first baby. Like, I feel like that's just the most wild, scary, unknown experience. But we're going to give her some time. She will be back. This isn't like Return of GIVR minus Courtney. We'll just say she's on maternity leave right now because she literally had a baby, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. So, yes, that's a little bit of an update on us. I'm really excited for her to come back when she's ready and share about her experience with you guys because I know she had a tremendous pregnancy and a really great birth, and she's just so fucking strong. I have some notes because I've been doing a lot of book listening and a lot of podcast listening, and things have been kind of like resonating with me. So I'm going to look on here. A lot of it, honestly, is when I like read the list of things that stuck out to me, it's a lot about personal responsibility. And this is the thing. I've always been big on personal responsibility, but not in the way that I understand it now. I feel like now I'm a little bit more gentle when it comes to personal responsibility. Before, it was almost in a way of avoiding shame and avoiding guilt and avoiding rejection or not wanting someone to see me in a certain way. So I would like take all the responsibility, take all the control. It's interesting because I was driving to my girlfriend's house today and I was thinking about her and myself, really. There's a way to honor your feelings when you're struggling, but there's also a way to understand that when you're struggling and when you're feeling down, when you're feeling depressed, you still can make choices to either make those feelings worse or try to make them better. And a lot of times when I feel down, for example, I talked a lot, not a lot. I talked a little bit with Jordan. I'm just going to call her Jordan because she has a name. I keep saying my therapist, but I was talking a lot to Jordan our last session about distortions. And I have a very distorted image of myself, especially my body. So for me, if I have a moment of distortion and I look in the mirror and I I think you're fat, you're huge, you're gross, all these things, I have those feelings. That's real. Normal me would kind of let them consume me and then continue to make decisions to make those feelings worse. So either not going to the gym, overeating to numb the feelings, all those sort of things. But what if I were to actually accept the feelings that I have when I have that distorted image of myself and then still realize that I can make choices to make myself feel better, whether that's going to the gym or going for a walk or eating healthy to feel good in my body. And that's what I mean by personal responsibility. It's not rejecting the distorted image or the bad feelings. It's feeling them, accepting them, and then deciding to make good choices anyways. And that's a huge thing that kind of came up for me. Okay, I probably should have talked about this first, but when I was talking earlier about releasing the anger that I felt, I feel like I was so upset about how I was treated in the past and that I didn't feel seen and that I didn't feel accepted, that I felt like I was trying to be changed. And in those feelings, I was actually doing the same to myself. I was not seeing myself. I was talking badly about myself. I was trying to change myself. I was doing all these things 10 times worse. So I was listening. I think it's A Return to Love by Marianne Wilkinson. And if you guys haven't listened to it, you really should. It's like I listened to it on Audible. It's a very short audiobook. I think I've listened to it maybe 3.5 times now. It's a very, very powerful read or listen. But I wrote down releasing anger to others for treating you poorly when you treat your own self way worse. Moving through the anger so you can lean into love. And I just heard her say that and I was like, oh, why am I so quick to hold other people accountable to treating me how I want to be treated, yet I don't do the same for myself? And I've always been someone that's like modeling behavior is the best way to show people how you want to be treated. So why wouldn't I start there? And that was a huge light bulb for me. I also wrote down, don't confuse someone else violating your boundaries with you violating your own. A lot of times this boundary setting is getting a bit extreme, I'm finding in today's climate. I feel like everyone's talking about oh, my boundaries, don't cross my boundaries, all these things. I think a lot of times this comes back to personal responsibility. We either don't communicate our boundaries, we don't set them, we don't even know ourselves well enough to know what we need our boundaries to be. And then all of a sudden, when we get too far down a road or someone upsets us, we're like, you're past my boundaries, you're pushing my boundaries. And it's a very interesting thing for me, because I feel like, I don't know, sometimes I think we expect people to know what we need or what we don't need without knowing ourselves. And then as soon as someone goes too far or doesn't do something that we wanted, we're so upset and rejected. And honestly, sometimes it comes out as anger. And I just think it's so important for you to know and be able to communicate expectations and your needs. It's very common for me to kind of witness within myself, even that we live in our own heads, making up why people do things, why people don't do things. I don't know. The world would just be so much simpler if we were able to communicate. I also wrote down this quote: relationships aren't here to make us happy, they're here to keep us conscious. And this is actually from the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I've listened to that maybe 2 times now. And that was just something that kind of stuck out for me, because especially as women, I think we want our husbands to always make us happy. And I'm very blessed that I have a husband that calls me out. So for me, if I go into my unconscious and I get judgmental or angry and I'm projecting some feeling onto something else, he'll be the first one to kind of be like, well, and kind of bring me back to the surface, to reality, to consciousness. I'm very lucky that he has that. I also feel like I've created a space that he feels like he can do that, because I don't snap at him or get angry when he calls me out gently. So yeah, I wrote that down. This is also from The Power of Now. When listening to another person, don't just listen with your mind, listen with your whole body. Feel the energy field of your inner body as you listen. That takes attention away from thinking and creates a still space that enables you to truly listen without the mind interfering. You are giving the other person space to be. It is the most precious gift you can give. Most people don't know how to listen because the major part of their attention is taken up by thinking. They pay more attention to that than what the other person is saying, and none at all to what really matters, the being of the other person underneath the words and the mind. This is just huge for me, because one of my core wounds from growing up was that I never really felt seen. And I think a lot of times, if I feel like someone's not listening to me or not hearing me or not understanding me, I get very frustrated and defensive and start to feel rejected. I myself will go into that mode and then stop listening to the other person as well. So it's just a really powerful quote. He talks a lot about not attaching your identity to your mind and being more an observer to your mind and your thoughts, and not being controlled by them. And I think it's really interesting because we think our thoughts are real. We start to get anxious and stressed about the future. We start to get sad about the past, and we completely disassociate from our bodies and from the present. Even just taking a second when I'm getting scared, or when I'm getting anxious, or when I'm getting sad, and to think about what I'm actually feeling and what I'm scared of, none of it is usually real. It's usually projections into either the future or the past. It's not right now. So that's huge for me. And I think I've really been focusing on actually listening to people when they talk to me, and feeling their energy and feeling them and feeling mine. And it's just, I'm already a slow talker and a slow listener. So I can't even imagine now. Ian probably wants to murder me. Whenever we have conversations, he's like, "Are you going to say something? What's next?" Like he's so quick. But I also think it's very powerful to just like slow down and be an observer and experience what's actually going on in front of you. I think that's really all I wanted to touch on today. It's kind of like a soft launch. I I talked to Jordan about what's next for me because obviously there's been this kind of chaotic 6 months of figuring out why I was so angry, why I was so sad, why I was so anxious, what I needed to kind of be able to move forward. And now that I'm there, it's like, okay, like what does moving forward look like? And we discussed the podcast and putting it back out. And we discussed a few other things that I want to do for myself and that I think will be powerful for other women as well, other people, not just women. We also discussed kind of like reintroducing myself, and it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. That's probably why I'm playing with my hair. And it makes me a bit nervous, but it is something that I want to do because I'm actually very proud of who I am and who I've always been and how I kind of show up and how I've come out of this, I don't know, transitional period in my life. So I just want to reintroduce myself, let you guys know who I am, what matters to me, and maybe you can resonate a little bit. My name is Melissa. I am someone that is very direct, but also very kind. And I have very high expectations for myself. I have very high expectations for others. I am someone that can give a lot of grace because I have a lot of empathy. I like to talk about really deep things. I like to talk about feelings, but I also don't like to take anything too seriously. I love my husband more than I ever thought I could ever love another human being. And my marriage to him is a huge defining thing in my life and for who I have become. I have struggled a lot my entire life feeling like I didn't fit in. I have always felt too much or not enough. When I turned 12 years old, I started to disassociate from myself and my body. I started to feel like I was too quiet, too flat. Then I started to feel too wild, too extreme. I started to rebel and I had a very wild, wild late teens, early 20s. And I always felt like something was wrong with me. I always felt like no one would understand me, that no one would accept me. I didn't even know how to be me to actually feel accepted. And I met my husband when I was in my early 20s. It was kind of a shock to the system because I felt like he didn't really want anything from me other than me. And I felt like he wanted to see all of me and that there was nothing that I could show him that wouldn't make him accept me and love me for exactly who I was. And the only thing that kind of kept us at odds when we were younger was that I didn't know how to show him me. So he really became a safe space for me. And through the last 12 years of our marriage, we've had a crazy life. We've had so many fun experiences. We've traveled. We've realized what matters to us, which is very simple things such as love, safety, security, happiness. And I'm now just realizing that everything that I need to be happy and fulfilled is already inside. There's just a lot of things that have been blocking them and stopping them from coming up. And all of those things are actually creations of my own mind and my own trauma. Yeah. I hope you guys can feel the shift in energy, and I hope that you're excited to move forward with Giver and the podcast. And I can't wait to keep sharing with you and connecting with you. And it's always going to be a learning process for me. I'm still learning and I'm always going to be a student to life. I just love you guys. And I appreciate you coming back, for sticking around through the quiet times. We're going to have some guests on to kind of fill the void while Courtney is raising a tiny, tiny human, because I can't rant like this for every episode. We're going to have Ian on and we're going to have some silly games that we play. We're going to have some real conversations. I hope you guys have been well, and I'll see you next week. Bye.